What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with 7 reasons to buy the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the regular Samsung Galaxy A14, not to be confused with the Galaxy A14 5G, which is a very similar phone to this one, but at the same time different. There are many differences, and I will be going over that in a separate video, but just keep that in mind that this video is just for this particular model of the phone. Now, there are a lot of things about this device that I like, but this video is going over my top 7. Now, coming in number 1 is that we're getting an ultra-wide camera here with the phone. Now, this is actually a pretty big surprise to me, considering that the 5G version of the device does not have an ultra-wide camera. So basically, even though this phone is cheaper than that phone, we are actually gaining that feature. But I'm gonna pull up the camera app right now, and I'll show you how to actually get to the ultra-wide camera. So basically, when you're in this interface, all you have to do is switch over to the 0.5 button, and then now we're in ultra-wide mode. So basically with the ultra-wide camera, we can fit a lot more of our surroundings into a single frame. Now, I especially like using that feature when I'm on vacation, for example, because it's a really nice way to basically change up my photos. Or maybe I'm taking a photo of a large building or a big tree. It's a lot easier to fit that into a single frame when using the ultra-wide camera. Now, in addition to that, there are several other cameras here on the phone, and all of them are actually impressively good considering this is a lower end phone. So we have a 50 megapixel main camera. We also have a 2 megapixel macro camera for close-up images, which you can access through the More tab. So with that macro camera, as you can see, you can get very close up and have things be in really good detail. And then the front-facing camera is not bad either at 13 megapixels. So basically the point is that if you're concerned that going for a more affordable smartphone like the A14 means that you're not going to be getting good cameras, that's not necessarily the case, as the cameras here are really good considering that this is a budget phone. Now, compared to a more expensive $1,000 smartphone, of course, there's going to be a lot of benefits with spending more. But for what this phone is, I feel like we're getting a lot of value with the cameras that are included. Now, moving on to number 2, and that is that we actually get a headphone jack included here with the Galaxy A14. Now, at this point in 2023, we're seeing less and less smartphones that actually give us a headphone jack, which is a bit disappointing. Originally, Apple was the first company to get rid of the headphone jack with the iPhone 7, and then soon after, we started seeing a lot of Android smartphone manufacturers begin not including it as well. Now, Samsung, for several years after the iPhone 7 was launched, they continued to provide the headphone jack on all of their devices. They even poked fun at Apple a little bit for that decision. But then we started seeing the S series no longer include a headphone jack. And then now even certain A series phones also don't give us the headphone jack. So it's nice to see that at least for the time being, we are still getting some phones in Samsung's A series that still provide it. Now, I'm sure many of you do have Bluetooth headphones, including myself, and that is usually my preferred method to listen to audio. However, it is still nice at least having the option to plug in traditional wired headphones. So I hope this feature makes a comeback. I have a feeling it won't, but for now, I definitely still will appreciate phones that still have it. Now, coming in number 3 is the display here with the Galaxy A14. Now, this display is nowhere near the best that Samsung has to offer. However, there are many things about it that I do find impressive. The first thing is, we're getting a very large display size at 6.6 inches. So that's going to make this phone ideal for watching video content, as you can view that on a very large canvas. And in addition to that, we're also getting pretty decent colors here too with the display. Viewing angles are also not bad either for a lower end phone. Now, unfortunately, the refresh rate with this device does max out at just 60 Hz. However, that's not necessarily anything that's too surprising with a phone in this segment, but what is impressive is that the display is 1080p. So things do look really nice and crisp and clear here, despite this being a lower end phone. Typically, phones in this segment only give us 720p for the display, so 1080p is really impressive there. Now, beyond that, we're getting a PPI 400, we're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, and we're getting an 80.2% screen to body ratio. So even though we do have a water drop notch up top here, it's barely a notch. I mean, it really doesn't stick out too far overall. And the bezels are decently thick here in the phone, but in general, I think this phone is a great design, and the display is very nice. Now, the next thing I want to discuss related to the Galaxy A14 is the really large battery that we're getting here with the phone. So with this device, we're getting a very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery. So that's a lot of battery capacity, but in addition to that, This phone also supports up to 15-watt fast charging. So it's one thing to have a big battery, but if the phone can't recharge at a fast rate, then it's going to take forever for that large battery to actually recharge. So thankfully, with the A14, that's not the case. You'll be getting at least a day, if not 2 days of usage out of this device. But in addition to that, we are getting up to 15-watt fast charging, which makes the situation even better here. So just know that if you're looking for a lower end phone that will still give you really good battery life, the A14 might be a phone worth considering. Now moving on, another awesome thing about this phone is the fingerprint sensor, which is located on the power button. The first thing is the placement for it is great, really convenient having it right there. I know on other devices the fingerprint sensor sometimes is on the back or built into the display. However, I do think it makes a lot of sense for the fingerprint sensor to be on the power button, considering that you are going to be using that button anyway to turn on the display of the phone. So you may as well have it double as the fingerprint sensor as well. Another nice thing too about it is that it is very fast and reliable. So as you can see, there we go. Let's try it one more time. So very good fingerprint sensor there. And especially for a lower end phone, of course, it's not quite as fast as what you'd find with the higher end options out there, but for what it is, it does work really well and is certainly very convenient there with its placement. Now the next thing I want to go over are the build materials of this device. Now the bad news is the phone is made completely of plastic besides the display, which is made of glass. But the good news is the phone does feel of decent quality, it's nice and durable, it definitely doesn't feel cheap, and I also really like the material that we're getting here on the back of the phone. It has kind of this linear texture here, and I also like that it's a matte finish, so it doesn't really pick up any fingerprints. So I'm really not a fan of phones that have a glossy back for that reason, that fingerprints tend to pop up very easily. So not only are we getting kind of a frosted side on the phone, but then the back panel here has this unique texture that doesn't really show fingerprints at all. So I'm really happy about that, and beyond that, I think it also does look very nice. So for a phone in this segment, and considering that it is a phone made out of plastic, I feel like Samsung couldn't have really done much of a better job with the build materials and overall build quality of the phone. And then the final thing I want to point out, the final benefit of this device, however, there are many others, I just can't include all those in the video for the purpose of time, but I really appreciate that this phone has NFC. Now, there is one thing I want to mention. This phone might not have NFC based on the region that you're in. This is the global model of the phone. I know in the future the phone most likely will be launched in the US, and there is a possibility that the US carrier version of the device won't have NFC. I certainly hope it does though, but it is possible that it might not. But at least this version of the phone does have NFC, so definitely double check when you're buying the A14 based on the region that you're in on whether or not you get that feature. But if you're not familiar with NFC, it's the technology that's used for tap and pay to make mobile contactless payments using services such as Samsung Pay, and I find it to be very helpful. I do still carry on my wallet with me, but it's a lot easier just to pull out my phone, pick out the card that I want to use, and then just tap and pay versus having to pull out my wallet and pick out the specific card. It's a feature that I personally don't find gimmicky and a feature that I use all the time. But this concludes my video on my top 7 reasons to buy the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new today about the phone. And if you liked the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.